have lived and worked in the USA and Asia, and have been one of many crucial lessons I've compiled for you to help you become more successful and happier in life. This one is particularly special because it has to do with something that happens to all of us at one point or another in our lives, and that is failure. Yes, we all fail, and when we do, what you want to do is embrace that failure and learn from that experience. Now, let's start with our quote of the day, and it goes like this. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve, and that is the fear of failure, which we all have at one point or another. But we need to get over that particular fear. Today, we're going to start with the introduction and mystery question. Then we'll go on to what is failure and why is failure actually good for you. Then we'll go into an activity called the failure toss. And this particular activity I find really interesting, and I hope you do too. Then we'll take a look at how to learn specifically from failure, the steps that you should take in order to gain the most from these experiences. And finally, of course, we'll wrap up with the mystery question answered. So let's get into that mystery question. And the question is, who is this famous American politician? Let me describe who he is. Number one, this particular person failed in business. He also failed in farming. He also lost running for state legislature at one point in time. He also then had a nervous breakdown and was rejected for a job as land officer. Now, that's not just it. In addition, he ran for Congress and, can you guess, failed. He ran for U.S. Senate and then failed. He ran for Vice President of the United States and, can you guess, failed. And finally, he ran for Senate again and, what do you think? He won? Lost? He failed. Who could this person be? That's the mystery question for this particular core lesson. And as we go throughout learning about failure, how to embrace failure, and how to learn from failure, can you guess who this particular American politician is or was? So to recap fairly quickly, because this was a short introduction and mystery question, we looked at the details of a famous American politician, specifically his failures, and then the question was, who is this person? All right, again, try to guess and get ready as we get into the next section. What is failure and why is it good for you? Okay. So what is failure and why is it good for you? Well, let's take a look. But first, as you might have guessed, go ahead and get out some paper and a pen. We're just going to do a little bit of writing, just a few notes. So once you get out that piece of paper, let's begin. I'll hit pause real quickly. Okay, let's continue. What is failure? I'm actually asking you, what is your definition of failure? Now, hold on a minute. Don't look in the dictionary. I want you to think of your own personal definition as best you can. It can be what you remember from the dictionary or what you learned in life or you heard from your parents, or it can be your own personal definition. What is failure to you? Go ahead, push pause, and write down one or two sentences defining failure as it applies to you. How about this question? Have you ever failed? Sure, it's an obvious answer. Everybody fails, right? Well, I'd like you to think of a time that you failed. Now, the bigger, the better. If you have failed big, fantastic. So take a moment. Think of some point in your life where you really tried. You did your best, but you failed. Okay, can you think of something? Again, write down that experience in a couple words. A sentence, 2, 3 sentences. It doesn't matter. Just briefly describe that experience of you failing. Failure is unavoidable and Necessary. Not what you were expecting from me, right? This isn't really a definition of failure, but this is the truth about failure. And this is what I really want you to understand and embrace throughout the rest of this lesson. Number one, you can't avoid failing. Number two, it's necessary. It's for your own benefit. So are any of you Batman fans by chance? I'm not necessarily a fan, but I have seen the movies. And in one of the movies, I don't remember which one, Bruce Wayne, or Batman as a child, happened to fall down, and his father had a lesson for him. And he said, "Son, why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up." That's brilliant to me. Failure is the foundation that learning is based upon. Think about how many times you had to fall in order to ride a bike, how many mistakes you needed to make in order to learn a new skill. How about to become a master at that skill? Imagine how many times you need to fail then. You shouldn't think negatively about failure because it's unavoidable, it's necessary, and it has several benefits that you should keep in mind. And what are those benefits? Well, let's look at 8 of them. Here's 8 reasons why failure is good. Number 1, embrace failure because, as I already said, everyone fails. Beware of social media, ladies and gentlemen. People post only the highlights of their lives and enhance the images and stories to make them look even better than they are. Your Facebook feed can make you feel like a lesser of a person because you might not feel like you have the life you should. But SNS isn't reality, right? Everybody struggles and fails. These failures are reality checks and teach us a little humility. Without failure, we might not reflect on our lives and appreciate what we have. And we'll see later, appreciation is a key to happiness. Number 2, failure makes you dig deeper and reach new understandings. Without failure, we might not reflect on our lives and appreciate what we have. Failure helps us reflect on the journey of life and what we want and where we're going. This reflection opens up new solutions to the problems we face. New opportunities arise. Number 3, failure emboldens the mind, making you stronger. Frederick Douglass once said that without struggle, there can be no progress. And how true is that? Every person who is truly successful in which it was not given to them by family or handed to them in some way has gone through some degree of difficulties. It's these difficulties that make people stronger and push them to realize their goals. Number 4, through failure, you learn life lessons that can't be learned from success. If you were always successful and never failed, what would you really learn? This idea is, of course, related to other reasons on the list, but it's something to remember when you're faced with failure in the future. You'll find yourself possibly deciding to continue or to give up. What will be your choice and why? Number 5, failure makes you search for new ways of doing things. Thomas Edison is famous for failing over 10,000 times to invent a commercially viable electric light bulb, but he never gave up. He viewed each failed attempt as a learning experience. Finally, after persistence, he invented a stable, working light bulb that changed human progress everywhere. Quite often, we need to work hard and continue to struggle before we solve the puzzles we're working on. Number 6, failure makes you more empathetic to the plight of others. Failure helps you better understand others' unfortunate situations. If you've experienced a similar struggle as someone else, then you can empathize with them much more. And better understanding people and the situations in the world leads to better connections with others and a better sense of morality and ethics. And we need these things to build better futures for ourselves, our children, and those around us. Number 7, knowing that it's okay to fail allows you to take more risks in life. Remember at the beginning of this lesson, we saw a quote, "There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve, the fear of failure." Well, fear, at least irrational fear, is your biggest enemy in so many things in life. The fear of public speaking, the fear of talking to that girl or boy you like, fear of asking questions, fear of trying something new, fear of being successful. It's a much bigger risk to not try than to try. And now that you know that failure is a teaching tool, you may become more ready to take on bigger yet smarter risks that lead to successes. And finally, success tastes far sweeter after major failures. You may have heard a saying similar to, "How can you appreciate the good without first knowing the bad?" Or, "You can't appreciate the light without the dark." If you rarely fail and only have small failures, then you will not really enjoy your successes. However, the opposite is true. Once you've struggled, failed, and then succeeded, that moment will be like no other. It will feel fantastic, and it will motivate you to continue developing yourself more into who you want to be. Therefore, to wrap things up on what is failure and why is it good for you, well, we looked at how to define failure. I asked you to define failure for yourself. Then I told you the simple truth about failure, that it is unavoidable and necessary. And finally, we looked at the 8 reasons that failure is good. So having said that, let's get ready for an interesting activity called the failure toss in the next lesson coming up. Now let's get ready for our activity titled the failure toss. And this is a pretty interesting activity that's going to help you reflect on the failures that you've made and the wisdom you've taken from these failures. So let's get going. But before we begin, I'd like you to get out not 1, but 2 of your worksheets for today's lesson. The first one is titled the failure toss activity. And the second one is titled your failure toss reflection worksheet. Please get those 2 out before we begin. Go ahead and push pause and come back after you have those 2 sheets ready. Look again at your definition of failure that I asked you to define in our previous lesson. And if you look up here, I've got a few examples of failure that maybe are definitions from other people. Let's read those real quickly. Number 1 up here, failure is when we don't match up to the expectations we have of ourselves. Okay, that's a good definition. Do you agree or disagree? The next one here is failure is when we can't meet the goals we set for ourselves. All right, that's a decent definition of failure. Maybe both of these are true in their own ways. How about the third one? I don't think there's a thing like failure because we always learn from our mistakes. You know, that's a really positive attitude on failure itself. Do you agree or disagree with that definition? Whatever your definition is, I'm curious, what are your particular failures? So let's get out your first worksheet titled Failure Toss Activity Worksheet. Now, if for some reason you don't have this is also doable on a piece of paper, but it's better if you have the one I've provided. And don't forget your pencil or pen. Once you've got that worksheet ready, go ahead and divide the worksheet down the center. Fold it vertically in half, creating 2 columns, as you can see in the image on your screen. Now you can see on the top left, we have a column called failures. And in the top right, we have a column called wisdoms. Now, I'd like you to list your failures in the left-hand column. For example, failure 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead, push pause, and fill out this left-hand column. Okay, now that we're back, I'd like you to reflect on each failure and what wisdom, what lesson do you feel that you've taken from each failure? I'd like you to list those wisdoms on the right-hand side that correspond with each failure. Take a moment here, push pause, and complete the right-hand column. Now that you've completed both columns, I'd like you to do this. That line going down the center, I'd like you just to rip it in half. Now, carefully, of course, so it's a clean cut, but separate both of these sides. Separate this paper into 2 halves. Okay, take a moment, push pause, do it quickly. From there, you have 4 choices I'd like you to make. Think carefully about these 4. Number 1, thinking about your failures and your wisdoms. Would you like to, number 1, keep both your failures and your wisdoms? Number 2, throw away your failures and keep your wisdoms? Number 3, throw away your wisdoms and keep your failures? Or number 4, throw away both your failures and your wisdoms? What would be your personal choice? We're going to push pause one more time so you can give it some thought. Okay, now, if you chose to throw away something, ball it up and throw it away in the trash. Just get rid of it. Go for it. Do it right now. Throw it away. All right. I'd like you to look at your failure toss reflection worksheet and answer these 3 questions. Number 1, what choice did you make? Go ahead and write it down in the space provided under number 1. That's an easy answer, right? You've just made it. Number 2, why? Now here's a little bit more difficult question. Why did you make that decision? Write it down in the space provided in number 2 and explain as best you can why you made that decision. And then number 3, what is the life lesson in this experience? Now, this is what you feel you've gotten from this exercise, philosophical or not. What do you feel is the potential life lesson that this exercise could provide you as an individual, you specifically? And that is the failure toss exercise. You might see the value in it at the moment, or you might not. And if you don't, you might see the value in it in the near future. We'll see. So wrapping up the failure toss, I asked you to get out your 2 worksheets, your failure toss worksheet and your reflection worksheet. And you made a choice, one of these 4 choices of what to do with your failures and your wisdoms. And then you filled out your reflection worksheet. And we might come back to this at some point in the future. Having said that, let's get ready for the next lesson, how to learn from failure. Now you know how to embrace failure, but how do we learn from failure? Well, what you need to do is put in the effort to do so. Before we begin on the steps on learning from failure, what I want you to do is keep in the back of your head, keep in mind the failures that you've made, maybe specifically the bigger failures that you've made, and think about these as we go throughout these next few steps. To learn from failure, you want to do 5 things in this order. Number 1, take responsibility. 2, identify the cause. 3, evaluate your thinking. 4, research it. And 5, document it. Let's go throughout each of these in a little bit more detail. Number 1, take responsibility. Recognize that you failed. That's not difficult. However, whose fault was it? Don't complain. Don't blame others or situations that are out of your control. If you mentally take responsibility and you own that failure, then you'll become mentally stronger and better prepared to prevent failure, or better prepared for the next time failure happens. Here are some quotes that you might like. I sure do. From the famous Jim Rohn, he said, "You must take responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself." Lou Holtz, quote unquote, "The man who complains about the way the ball bounces is likely to be the one who dropped it." And number 3, George Washington Carver. 99% of all failures come from people who have a habit of making excuses. Don't make excuses. Don't complain. Own your failure. Number 2, identify the cause. Quite often, the cause of failure is not one particular situation, action, or decision. It's usually a combination of decisions that were made over time. Look back on what decisions you made and which ones have contributed to the final result of failure. And document. Write it down. Document every decision, working backwards until you reach the point that ultimately became the road to failure. Number 3, evaluate your thinking. Try to recall, number 1, how you imagined how things would turn out, and 2, how things actually turned out. What was your vision of success and what was reality? Ask these questions. Were my goals reasonable and attainable? Did I make a mistake in setting my goals? Did I make accurate assumptions about my capabilities and the challenges? Did I make a mistake in judging the situation? Did my strategies make sense, given the circumstances and goals? Did I make a mistake in charting my course and choosing my methods? How logically organized, feasible, and complete was my plan? Did I make a mistake in creating the plan? And did my team, colleagues, friends, or just myself, did I follow the plan? Did I make a mistake in execution? All of these are really important questions to ask and to answer. 4th, research it. Research how similar situations were dealt with by others. This will help you see what obstacles they faced and how they tried to overcome them. What can you learn from others' situations? Take notes on what you learn. Remember, there's a wealth of knowledge out there in books and online. You can learn from the best of the best, from the successful people in the world, from their mistakes and their successes. Put in the effort to find out those answers. Once you've looked at how others have dealt with similar situations, ask people you know what they think. Approach experts if possible. If not, talk to people who you might think have good advice. Have a conversation with them and explain the situation, ask questions, and write down their feedback. And finally, perhaps the most important part, once you know the cause of that failure, what led up to that failure, the decisions that were made, how others have approached similar problems, and you have some advice from others, then put it all on paper in a logical and organized format. This can be a great resource for you later, so do it. It may seem like a lot to do or possibly unnecessary, but remember, successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. So be willing to do what is necessary. There you have it. These are 5 steps to the road to understanding failure, embracing failure, and then learning from it. Take this advice and remember these 5 steps are: 1, take responsibility. 2, identify the cause. 3, evaluate your thinking. 4, research it. And 5, document it. That's it for this section on learning from failure. Let's get ready to answer the mystery question for embracing failure and learning from it. It's time to wrap up our core lesson on embracing failure and learning from it with the answer to our mystery question. Do you remember the question I asked you? Well, let's do a quick review. I asked you a question about a man who failed in business, farming, lost running for state legislature, had a nervous breakdown, got rejected for a job as land officer, ran for Congress and lost, ran for U.S. Senate and lost, ran for vice president of the U.S. and lost, and then ran again for Senate and lost. Who could this famous American politician be? Well, let me give you one more clue that might let you guess. Finally, he succeeded. He was elected President of the United States, but shortly after that, the nation split in 2. Well, can you guess now? The answer is none other than the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. Despite all his failures and setbacks, Lincoln never gave up. He learned from his mistakes and persisted. It was the sum of all these experiences that made him stronger and the type of person who would become what is believed to be one of the best leaders the world has ever seen. So keep in mind and try to remember that behind every successful person is a number of failures. Let the story of Abraham Lincoln be inspiration to you the next time you fail. And remember this quote, straight from Lincoln himself: You cannot fail unless you quit. And as always, remember to become a teacher. Take what you've learned in this lesson and spread the good news. If you know someone who's down because they've failed, teach them the 8 reasons why failure is good. If you know someone who has failed, help them understand how to learn from those failures, to take responsibility, identify the cause, evaluate their thinking, research, and then document. Overall, as you become the teacher, not only do you help others, you gain a deeper knowledge, a deeper insight into those lessons. So, as I said, that wraps it up for this particular core lesson on embracing failure and learning from it. Let's get ready for the next lesson, happiness and the science behind it. Lessons I've compiled for you to help you become more successful and happier in life. This course focuses on goals. And this is something you want to work on as hard as possible now and continue to do so over time in the future. You want to revisit this lesson over the years because it plays such an important role in today and your future development. And our topic is on goals, specifically how to set the goals for the life you actually want. Now, our lesson is going to start with a quote. And our quote of the day goes as follows: "Life best lived is life by design." And what that means is the best kind of life to live is the one that you design and the one that you control. This lesson on goals, this core lesson on goals, will start out with today's introduction and mystery question. I'm going to give you a mystery question at the beginning. It should help stimulate your thinking and be a little bit interesting to you. And you want to try and answer that question as we progress throughout this lesson. At least think about it. And then at the end of this core lesson, I'll give you the answer. We'll see how close you came to figuring it out. Second, I'm going to tell you why you should have goals. Next, we'll have a workshop, a warm-up to get us thinking about our goals, get you in the right mindset. Next, we'll go to workshop part 1 on goals, which is goal setting. Then we'll go to part 2 of our workshop, which is goal strategy. And then finally, as I said, we'll wrap things up by giving you the answer to the mystery question. Before we begin, though, I really want to impress upon you that today's lesson on goals really helps build the foundation of only not the rest of this 12-part course, but also the rest of your life. It really sets you in the right direction and helps you accomplish whatever goals you seek to finish. I'd like to introduce you to a man named Jim Rohn, and he's one of my favorite guys. He's really an inspirational man. He's an American entrepreneur, author, motivational speaker. He's really helped a lot of famous people that you might have heard of become who they are today. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2009. He has an interesting quote that I found inspirational, and it really has a lot to do with today's lesson. And it goes like this: "You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight." And that's what we're going to do. We're going to find your direction, put you on the right path to getting those goals finished. Because without direction, how are you going to get to where you want to go? So help me if you will. I know I can't see you, although you can see me. I would like you to raise your hand if you have specific goals for the next 5 years. Do you? Do you have specific goals you want to accomplish within the next 5 years? Raise your hand, yes or no. Okay, how about this? Do you have specific goals for the next 10 to 20 years? That one's a little more difficult. Raise your hand, yes or no. All right, we're getting closer to the right mindset. So let's build up this mystery question. Let me give you some background on Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn had a mentor. His name was Earl Shoaff. And Earl Shoaff really put him on the path to success. After all, Jim Rohn became a multimillionaire. Earl Shoaff, Jim Rohn's mentor, asked him a question when Jim was about 25 years old. He asked him if he had something specific about his goals. And if he didn't have this particular important thing, then Mr. Schulf said he could guess his bank balance within a few $100s. Jim Rohn said that he actually did not have this particular thing regarding his goals, and Mr. Schulf was able to guess his bank balance fairly accurately, which was not that much money. Can you guess what this thing was? What important thing did Jim need to have regarding his goals? So the question again, what is one of the most important things you need to do with your goals? Something you need to have. I want you to try and guess before the end of this class. And I'll give you the answer at the end of this core lesson. So let's recap what we talked about for this introduction on goals. I mentioned that your goals lay the foundation for your success and, of course, the next 11 lessons. I mentioned a man named Jim Rohn, highly successful and has helped others become very successful, specifically because of goals. I mentioned that goals help you find direction in life. And finally, the mystery question I asked, what is the crucial thing you need to do and have regarding your goals? Okay, so that wraps up this introduction to our first core lesson. Let's get ready for the second part, which is why have goals? Great, so let's start section 2 of this core lesson. It's really about why you should have goals. So thinking about why is goal setting so important? What have you heard about the importance of goals or setting goals? Well, today I'd like to take you through 3 distinct reasons that goals are important for your life and why you should be setting them. Number 1, goals help you design your future. Now, we just saw this in the previous section with the quote from Jim Rohn. If you recall, life is best lived by design. You want to have control over your life. You want to be the designer of your own life. Now, how many of you remember Alice in Wonderland? Now, if you don't recall the author, that person's name was Lewis Carroll, and one of the characters was the Cheshire Cat. At one point, Alice was asking a question. She was lost and she wanted to find her way out. The Cheshire Cat asked her, well, which way do you want to go? Or where do you want to go? And she wasn't sure. The Cheshire Cat responded by saying, well, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. What can you take from that quote? If you don't have a clear direction, if you're not working on your goals, and you don't know where you're going, you're really not going to go very far. At least you're not going to go where you were hoping to go. Number 2, goals pull you through the hard times. Now, we all have our aspirations for the future. When we set these goals and we run into obstacles, looking at these goals, being clear on these goals, and especially knowing why we set these goals will help us continue through these obstacles. All too often, people quit when things get hard. It's inevitable that you will face difficulty and self-doubt on your struggle to success. Goals will help you remember what you're doing and why you're doing it. And number 3, goals can transform your life. And this is truer than you may think. Once you're clear on where you want to go in life and you're clear on all of the goals that you've set, then you find direction and you really start going down that path at an accelerated speed. You start accomplishing 1, 2, or 3 goals. You build your confidence, and then the next thing you know, you've built this momentum that's going to keep pushing you further down the road towards success. And then one day, not far from then, you look back and you can compare who you are today to who you were yesterday, and the difference can be really surprising in a positive way. So there you have it. These are 3 special reasons that goals are important, not only to have, not only to set, but to continue to strive toward. And those are as the following. Number 1, they give you a design for your future. They give you the control over your life. Number 2, they pull you through tough times because there are always obstacles in front of us. You just can't escape that reality. So be prepared for them, and goals help you with that preparation. And number 3, they transform your life. You'll be so surprised once you have a clear set of goals and once you continue to work on those goals that they really change the person that you are and they help you become the person you want to be. So I hope you found value in this particular lesson, that you better understand why it's so important to set goals. And let's get ready for the next section. We're going to do a warm-up to get you mentally prepared to start setting these goals. Okay, see you very soon. Fantastic. We're almost ready to set your goals. But before we do so, I want to get you in the right state of mind. So what we want to do now is to go through a little bit of a goal-setting warm-up, so to speak. If you haven't guessed already, the first thing I'm going to ask for you to do is get out some paper and a pen. Doesn't really matter. It could be just some scratch paper. Just as long as you have a blank piece of paper and something to write with, you should be okay. Okay, push pause for 1 second, grab that paper and pen, and then let's begin. Okay, are you ready? The first question that I have for you are, what are 5 things you've already accomplished that you're proud of? Now, this could be something simple or complex. Are you proud of something that you worked hard to purchase? Or something you've worked hard to accomplish, like a skill that took some time? Perhaps it's a relationship. Maybe you're really proud of a girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, or even a friendship that you have. Whatever it is, list 5 things that you have accomplished that you're proud of. Push pause, write those down, and then we will continue. Great. Now I'm going to ask you a quick question that I think we both know the answer to already is, do you want to accomplish bigger things? Well, most likely yes, because why else would you be taking this course, right? Well, since most likely the answer is yes, my next question is, what do you want? What do you want in the next 10 years? Now, we're going to go through a little process. I'm going to ask you to list on your piece of paper 20 items at least. 40 is better. But before you start, I want you to think, in a perfect world, what would you want to have, or what would you want to have accomplished in the next 10 years? Again, in a perfect world, what do you want? But before you start writing, I want you to make sure you have SMART goals, a SMART list. And what does that mean? Well, you might have guessed the SMART stand for something. Let's go through what those are. S stands for specific, and this is very important. Whatever your goal is, you want to make sure that it's clearly written and not vague. You want to be detailed. For example, don't say something like, I want more money. Well, if I gave you $1, congratulations, you got more money. If you want more money, specifically, how much do you want? If you want to be more skilled, what specific skill do you want? What degree or level do you want? Next is M. M stands for measurable. State how much and how often. How will you judge your success? You got to be specific, and it needs to be something that can be measured. So when you're writing your goals, how will you know when you accomplish those specific goals? A stands for achievable. This means be realistic. Make certain it's realistic and you can get the resources that are needed. Now, you don't want things to be too easy. Easy goals are achievable, but they're not satisfying. You want to challenge yourself. Whatever goals you set, have goals that will challenge you. It's that challenge that makes the accomplishment that much better. R is relevant. Relevant means that each goal should help make a significant improvement in your life. Again, let's use the make more money example. Whatever specific and measurable amount of money you've put down, how will that make a difference in your life? If you put down a specific skill that you would like, how is that going to make a significant improvement in your life? If you want to own something, how is owning this thing going to make a significant improvement in your life? And finally, T. That's time bound. There should always be a due date. There should be some approximate completion date. There should be some research and realistic time frame, because if there isn't a due date, then it sort of doesn't really exist. Giving yourself a deadline is going to push you more toward accomplishing that goal. So returning to question number 2, write somewhere between 20 to 40 items that you want to accomplish in the next 10 years. Okay, you've got the idea. Go ahead and push pause and see how many items you can come up with. Now, I want you to take a look at all of the items you've listed and assign each item a number, either a 1, 3, 5, or 10. These numbers represent the amount of years you expect it's going to take to accomplish each item. It's a rough estimate, so don't worry too much about the specifics. Yet, still go ahead, give them a 1, a 3, a 5, and a 10. Okay, go for it. Push pause. Now let's do something interesting. I want you to count. How many 1s, 3s, 5s, and 10s do you have? Again, push pause real quick, count the number. Go for it. Now, if you have a larger amount, a significantly larger amount of 1s compared to 10s, what does that tell you? It tells you you're more focused on short-term goals. If you have more 10s than 1s, then you're more focused on long-term goals. If you're even across all 1, 3, 5, and 10s, well, that's pretty balanced, right? If you're more short-term focused, maybe you want to think more about long-term, and vice versa. Next, what are your top 5 goals on that piece of paper? Look at all 20 to 40, and I want you to circle the top 5 that are most important to you. Take a minute, push pause, and do that. Can you take the time and write down 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences for each of these 5 goals? Can you clearly state why each of these goals is important to you? As clearly as possible, write down why are these 5 goals important to you? Go for it. All right, now looking back at your answers on why, there's a quote that I want you to remember, and here it is on your screen. When the why gets stronger, the how gets easier. The why pulls you toward the future, and that pull becomes stronger and quicker towards reaching your goals. All great accomplishments start with an idea. Imagination is the beginning of reality. So if you can clearly articulate why you want something, the stronger and the easier it's going to be for you to get to those goals. Okay, great. Congratulations. Thank you for going through this process with me. Hopefully you've taken the time and effort to clearly and completely finish this particular workshop. It really will make a significant difference as we get into the next section. And to recap what we went over, we looked at your past accomplishments. What are you proud of? Get you stimulated. 2, what do you want to accomplish or have in the next 10 years? And we want to make sure that those things are SMART goals. From there, we want to understand why specifically. Why do you want to accomplish these particular goals, especially your top 5? That's going to make a significant difference as you go throughout the strategy toward accomplishing those 5 goals. Okay, well, I hope you're getting a little bit excited about your goals, because pretty soon you're going to be clear on the goals that you have for the rest of your life, and you're going to be affected because you have those goals in front of you. So let's get started with part 1 of our goal setting workshop. I'd like you to get your paper out again if you don't already have it with you, and get a new piece of paper. We're going to start something fresh, more or less. So we've talked about short-term goals and long-term goals. Now, I want you to think about these slightly differently now. With your short-term goals, I want you to think of those as your confidence builders. As you accomplish your short-term goals, they should give you more energy into focusing on your long-term goals. The more successes that you have with your short-term goals, they're going to help aid you in accomplishing your long-term goals, which you want to refer to or think of as your dreams. To be a little more specific with short-term and long-term, I want you to think of short-term as under 5 years and long-term as over 5 years. In the previous lesson, you categorized your goals into 1, 3, 5, and 10 years. So let's lump the 1 and 3 as your short-term and the 5 and 10 as your long-term. Now, there are different types of short-term and long-term goals. One is economic goals. Two are your things, the things you want to own and possess. And three is your personal development. We want to make a list of all of your short-term and long-term goals you can come up with. On a sheet of paper, I want you to divide your list into short-term and long-term goals. And then we're going to break them up into these other three categories. So on that piece of paper, on the left side, create a column for short-term, and on the right side, create a column for long-term. And then create an area for economic, things, and personal development. Now you should already have a list of, let's say, 20 to 40 items for your goals in general. Take what you wrote down on that list and transfer them over to this new piece of paper in this format. Go ahead, push pause, and work on it. And we'll come back to it later. Don't worry if it's not as complete as you were hoping. We will revisit it. Now let's think a little bit more about these goals. Let's start with your economic goals. These are things like income, business, profit. How much money do you want to make and by what date? How much money do you want to save and by what date? And what about investing? Have you thought about that? How much money would you like to invest and by when? Go ahead, push pause, and write down your goals for today regarding your economic goals, your money goals. Did you know that only the top 5% of people make, keep, and update their economic goals? That should make you feel pretty good because you're on your way. Number 2 is things. What things do you want? What do you want to own? What do you want to possess? Again, transfer the items you made earlier on your previous piece of paper onto this new piece of paper under the category of things. Press pause and make sure you've completed that as best possible. Okay, you know it's fun as you list the major things you want to own and by when. What's good is as you accomplish these goals, check them off. This helps get you excited. It builds momentum and increases your confidence, pushing you further toward accomplishing those long-term goals. And thirdly, personal development. Now, think of the person who you want to become. What skills do you need to acquire? What information do you need to have? What about you personally? How do you want to improve yourself? Maybe your habits, your personality, your health. Push pause and complete this section on personal development. Don't forget your short-term and long-term goals. Now, as we think more about personal development, what about books? What books have you read recently or are you currently reading? Think about how often do you read? Do you read books for entertainment or to improve yourself? I highly suggest make reading books a part of your goals. So what books can you think of that you'd like to start reading? All right, push pause again, add those to your list in personal development. Still, regarding personal development, listen to what one of the greatest experts on personal development had to say about the topic. This is a fantastic quote. Please understand it and try to live by it. It goes like you see on your screen. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living, you'll make money, you'll do okay. However, if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. Quite often, you'll find that income rarely exceeds someone's personal development. That means rarely would someone be paid more than the value they bring to a company, organization, or another person. Now, let's take a look at all the goals you've just listed in the categories of economic, things, and personal development. Take a quick look and count. How many economic goals do you have? How many thing goals do you have? And how many personal development goals do you have? Is it fairly balanced or do you have a lot more on one side than the other? Especially take a look at your personal development count. If you don't have a lot of personal development goals, you want to maybe rethink that because it's the personal development goals that will feed the economic successes and the thing successes. And when it comes to these three categories, economic, things, and personal development, It's good to have goals for things, but we're going to focus on economic and personal development goals because it is these goals that bring you success, real success. And once you have success, you can make your own choices on what things you want to get. And as you work on accomplishing your goals, remember that we don't always succeed at the first attempt. That's just natural. Actually, it often takes us several tries to win. So as you see some successes and as you see some failures, don't give up. We grow from two things, the joy of winning and the pain of losing. Be happy when you win and learn from when you lose. But don't let losing defeat you. We all must lose at some point. Failure is a great teacher. And as you take a look at your goals, some may be relatively easy to accomplish, while others require time and effort. Put a check mark next to the goals that take time and effort. Plan to celebrate once you accomplish these goals. How do you plan to celebrate when you reach some of those goals? Okay, now it's time to get to our worksheet. You've put a lot of effort on your scratch paper. Now we want to transfer these ideas into a more solid form, which is your worksheet. And this worksheet is called your goal setting worksheet. Now refer to your notes. I want you to write your goals in the order of importance to you within their categories. Again, short-term goals are under 5 years and long-term goals are over 5 years. Take a moment to assign the numbers with 1 being the most important and then go from there. Do this separately for short-term and long-term goals. Remember to make them SMART goals, your SMART goals. Later, you can make copies of this worksheet and enter your goals, or you can keep a copy of all your written goals on a piece of paper. That's really up to you. So just to clarify, again, here we have our goal setting worksheet. First, we start with our short-term goals, and I've listed about 15 goal areas for you. If you have more, just use another piece of paper or print this worksheet out again. Make sure you have your goals and their due dates here, and this is your list of importance. So short-term goal number 1 should be the most important goal for you here, and then all the way down to 15 being the least important of all of these 15 goals. And I put only 10 areas because typically people have fewer long-term goals than short-term. If you need more space than I provided here, just print another copy. And don't forget, goal number 1 for long-term is your highest priority goal. Now, once you've finished this goal-setting worksheet, no matter what you do, make sure you have these written down. Make sure you have your goals on a piece of paper, whether it's your own paper or this worksheet, and put it somewhere visible where you can see it every day. That way, it's always in the back of your mind. It's always present. So you're always conscious of working on those goals. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's a lot of work, but this is really the hardest lesson in all 12 of these core lessons. And it's also really important that you take the time to go through these steps and complete them as best possible. So let's recap what we went over in this particular lesson. 1, we talked about economic goals. What are the money goals, the monetary goals that you want? 2, the thing goals, those things that you want to own and possess. And 3rd, personal development, those things where you want to become a better person tomorrow than you are today. 4, don't forget to grow from your experiences, especially your failures. Failures make you stronger and they prepare you for future successes. 5, make sure you celebrate. Life isn't worth living unless you have fun, right? So when you do succeed, celebrate. Do something special. And finally, keep your goals visible. You've got to see them. Number 1, you've got to write them down. And 2, you've got to post them somewhere that you can always look at. So now you understand your goals. You've set your goals. The next thing we need to do is get you a strategy to actually reach your goals. And that's this lesson. I have a question for you. What is the formula for successful goals? It's A plus B equals success. So what do you think A and B are? Well, I'll just show you. A is write your goals down, plus B, which is work on your goals regularly. So congratulations, you've already written your goals down. That was our previous exercise. The next thing you need to do is work on those goals. And not only work on those goals, you want to do it, as I said earlier, you want to do it regularly. So in order to work on your goals, you need a strategy. What is a strategy? Well, it's pretty simple. Let's say you've got your idea and you have your set of goals to reach your idea, your result. So you want to go from idea to result. What do you need? A bridge. And that bridge is essentially your strategy. And after all, a goal without a strategy is just a dream, nothing more. So you need that strategy. And when you're ready to work on that strategy and you want to reach your goal, to create a strategy, you need to break down your goal into certain steps. Let's say baby goals, and one will precede the other, so you have an order of accomplishment. And these smaller parts are clear and realistic steps to get you toward finishing that goal, toward your result. For example, let's say you have a short-term goal. I'm going to choose opening a business. Now, in order to open a business, what do you need to do? Well, you probably need to do some research, and then let's say you write a business plan. From there, you go to the bank and get a loan, and with that money, you're able to buy or rent your space and buy everything that you need and get things organized. And then when you're ready to open a business, you can market your business for its grand opening, and then ta-da, you're a business owner with a functioning business. Let's say you have a long-term goal. For example, become CEO. Okay, great, that's ambitious. What steps do you need to become a CEO? Well, the general steps might include, number one, get your degree. It's not always necessary, but it gives you an advantage. Then you get your position at the company of your choosing, hopefully. From there, you gain experience over the years and get promoted regularly on the fast track towards success. And from there, you want to make yourself valuable, indispensable, and you have a much better shot at becoming CEO. So what I want you to do, I would like you to look at your previous paper, your goal-setting worksheet. Now you have a list of your short-term and long-term goals. Take a look at your short-term goals and choose one of your top 5 short-term goals. I want you to work on one of those. From there, I want you to identify the major steps from start to finish in order for you to get that result, to accomplish that goal. Let me give you 2 more examples. Let's say you want to become a Pilates instructor. Well, take a look at all of these steps, these major steps that it takes to get success in this field. Number 1, decide the type of instructor you want to be. 2, certification. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, continuing education. Now, you need to identify not only those steps involved, but you need to also have a good understanding of the time it's going to take for you to accomplish each of these. Let's go to another example. Let's say self-publish your own book. There are more steps possibly involved and maybe more time involved. Number 1, write the book. Well, there are a lot of steps just inside that major step, right? That could take a year, and the rest of them maybe a little bit less time, but overall, it can take quite a chunk of time, right? But you've identified the steps you need to take and the time required to do so. So let's get out your next worksheet. And that worksheet is titled your Goal Strategy Worksheet. What I want you to do is, again, choose that one short-term goal you're going to create a strategy for. Then do your research. Research the steps involved, fill in major steps, maybe any mini steps as well, and the time required. And this is going to take a little bit of time, so do this for homework. Let's take a closer look at your goal strategy worksheet. So here we are. Put your name and your date, but more importantly, here you will put your specific goal title. And remember, you've got a due date for this. Put in that due date here. List the major steps, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. And then maybe break it down into smaller steps, mini steps, A, B, and C. And of course, don't forget the completion times here with a total time. Once you've gone through that process, you'll have a much clearer idea of the amount of time it's going to take for you to complete all of your major steps. And there's something I want you to keep in mind as you progress throughout these 12 core lessons. As we cover future lessons in this course, you might want to modify your goals. New ideas will pop up. Maybe new goals will surface. That's okay. Remember, goal setting is always a work in progress. So get excited about modifying your goals now and in the future. And I have a personal challenge for you if you're willing to take it. How about committing to accomplish one of your short-term goals by the end of this course? This is a great opportunity to challenge yourself and really get involved. This will also serve as added motivation for you to accomplish a goal sooner than later, and you will feel fantastic having done it. So what do you think? Take that challenge. Choose a goal. Try to finish it before you finish these 12 core lessons. Now you have a clear understanding of the bridge you need to create from your idea to your result or your goal. And that's your strategy. So let's recap what we talked about. We covered the formula for successful goals, which is A and B. A being write down your goals, and B, work on those regularly. We looked at how to make a strategy, how to identify the major steps in each strategy, and to expect to modify your goals and your strategy as you progress in the future. And I asked you, take a personal challenge, take my personal challenge, try to complete one of your goals before the end of these core lessons. The last part is the mystery question answered. Get ready for that section coming right up. So the final section of each core lesson will end with the answer to our original mystery question. And if you recall our mystery question for this core lesson on goal setting and goal strategy, it had to do with a man named Jim Rohn. To remind you of the situation, Jim Rohn's mentor, Earl Shoaff, asked him a question when he was in his early 20s. He asked him if he had something specific about his goals, and if he didn't have this important thing, then Mr. Shoaff said he could guess his bank balance within a few $100s. Jim Rohn said that he actually did not have this, and Mr. Shoaff was able to guess his bank balance accurately, which was not that much. Can you guess what that thing was? What important thing did Jim need to have regarding his goals? And the answer is goals that are written down. You might have guessed this already, but perhaps not. The point is, writing down your goals is crucial, and you've done that already. Keep doing it. Now, I've got a little homework for you for our next lesson on time management. What I'd like you to do is fill out this time tracking worksheet. I want you to plan and then record one weekday of how you spend your time. Once you get out your time tracking worksheet, you'll see something that looks just like this. And what I want you to do is in this area here, this column, what you planned to do, I want you to write out before your day begins. I want you to write out what you expect to do for a perfect day from 7 a.m. all the way through 7 a.m., 24 full hours. Now, of course, include sleep somewhere in here. Write out your perfect day as best you can. And then before you start that day, keep track over here on the right column, what you actually did. Write down what you actually did, again, for 24 hours, 7 a.m. through 6 a.m., here on the right column. You're going to want to have this completed and ready to go for your next lesson on time management. So make sure you do it. It'll be worthwhile. And I'd like to conclude with a lesson from a man named Seneca. Seneca was a Roman philosopher, statesman, and dramatist, and his quote went like this: While we teach, we learn. What that means is as you teach something, you actually learn that subject in greater depth. And I want you to try to do this with each of our 12 core lessons. This is something I would like you to think about and seriously consider. Take a moment to let Seneca's quote here sink in. It really is true that you become better at understanding a concept and better at putting ideas into practice if you actually take the role as the teacher, even a minor role. Scientists have called this phenomenon the protege effect, and research shows that when students tutor others in the same subject, 3 things happen. Number 1, they work harder to understand the material, they can recall it more accurately, and 3, they can apply it more effectively. That's really valuable. So become a tutor of this material. Tell your brother, sister, or friend about what you've learned and ask to teach them. Why? Well, you will learn the material in even greater detail. You will be helping someone else become a better person. And helping others is one of the ingredients to happiness, something we'll touch on in greater detail in our lesson on the science of happiness. So, once you've finished completing this lesson's worksheets, print out another copy of the goal setting worksheet and the goal strategy worksheet and help someone start working on their goals. Fantastic job, ladies and gentlemen. You have completed your first core lesson and it's really worth it. So make sure you stick with it and complete all core lessons. You'll be glad you did, and I'll see you for
50/50 Kobo. Please like and subscribe, brothers and sisters.